Part 1/3. Title: I flew on a plane with a billionaire, and it changed my life. This is one of those "I swear this actually happened" stories that I've debated telling for years. I'm still not sure I should be posting it now, but it's been sitting in my drafts like a ticking time bomb, so here goes nothing. It happened about 4 years ago, back when I was 28, broke, and working as a glorified courier for a boutique logistics company. Boutique, here being code for "we deliver weird expensive stuff for people with way too much money." We did everything from overnighting rare wines to flying custom-built guitars across the country because someone needed them for a party. Anyway, that's how I ended up on a last-minute booking from New York to Zurich. The job was simple: fly with a package, don't let it out of my sight, deliver it to a man named Mr. R. That's all the email said. I didn't even know what was inside until my boss handed me a sleek, lockable aluminum case the size of a shoebox. "Don't open it," he said, with the kind of tone that made me immediately want to open it. When I got to JFK, I was already bracing myself for 8 hours of sitting in coach next to someone who would hog the armrest and watch reality TV without headphones. But instead, when I handed over my ID at the gate, the attendant smiled way too brightly and said, "Oh, Mr. Green, you'll be boarding with our special guest today." Special guest? Cool. Maybe I'd be sitting near some washed-up rock star. What I wasn't expecting was to be led out of the terminal entirely, and into a sleek black Mercedes van. There was one other passenger already inside. He was maybe late 50s, wearing a gray cashmere sweater and no expression at all. I recognized him instantly from headlines. Let's just say he's on that list, the one Forbes puts out every year with more zeros than I'll ever see in my bank account. He looked at me like he was cataloging my entire existence in 2 seconds. Then he said, "That's mine?" I froze. The case?" "Yes. I mean, I'm supposed to deliver it to me." He gave the smallest nod, then looked back out the window. Conversation over. We drove out to a private hangar. I'm not going to lie, I'd never been on a private jet before, and I'd always assumed they were just smaller versions of commercial planes. Nope. This thing was a flying luxury apartment. Cream leather seats, wood paneling, a bar stocked with more liquor than my entire college experience. The flight attendant, who introduced herself as Mara, took my coat and offered me champagne before we'd even taken off. I sat down across from the billionaire, case on my lap like it was a bomb. We took off without the usual screaming engines and rattling, just this smooth, eerie glide. I was still trying to process the fact that my net worth had probably just doubled by sitting in one of these seats when he spoke again. "You didn't look inside?" I hesitated. "No. I was told not to." He gave this tiny smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Curiosity is expensive." The first few hours were quiet. He read from a tablet. I stared out at the clouds, drank coffee, and pretended my heart wasn't trying to escape my ribcage. Around the 3rd hour, Mara served lunch, actual plates, silver cutlery, steak cooked perfectly medium rare. I was halfway through when he asked me what I did outside of delivering boxes. It wasn't the kind of small talk you make to be polite. He looked at me like he actually wanted the answer. I told him about my failed attempts at starting a travel blog, my side hustle as a freelance photographer, the fact that I'd been living paycheck to paycheck since college. When I finished, he leaned back, steepled his fingers, and said, "You're wasted where you are." We didn't talk much more after that. But as we began descending into Zurich, he leaned forward. "Do you know why you're here?" I opened my mouth to say, "To deliver this case." But he cut me off with a shake of his head. "That's part of it. The other part, you'll see soon enough." Zurich Airport at night is eerily quiet. We didn't go through customs. Instead, We were met at the tarmac by two black SUVs. He got into the first. Mara gestured for me to follow into the second. The driver didn't say a word as we wound through narrow cobblestone streets until we stopped outside a building that looked like an old bank. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and something metallic. The billionaire was already there, sitting at a long table. The case was in front of him. He unlocked it with a code and turned it toward me. I expected money, jewels, something flashy. Instead, there was a single object, a small glass sphere, no bigger than a baseball, filled with swirling silver liquid. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. I shook my head. He smiled again, just as faint as before. "Neither do I." "Not exactly." Before I could ask what he meant, a door at the back of the room opened and 3 other men walked in. They were all dressed in dark suits, all watching me with unreadable expressions. One of them, tall, thin, and bald, spoke in heavily accented English. "Is this the courier?" The billionaire nodded. "For now." The bald man's eyes stayed on me for a beat too long before he turned to the billionaire. "We're ready for the demonstration." What happened next is burned into my brain. The billionaire lifted the sphere gently, almost reverently, and set it in the center of the table. The silver liquid inside began to move, not like it was being shaken, but like it was alive. It formed shapes, symbols, letters I didn't recognize. The room was dead silent except for the faint hum coming from the sphere. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the liquid went still. The billionaire looked at me and said, "I think you should be part of this." And that's where part 1 ends. I didn't know then that saying yes would change everything, and maybe even put my life at risk. Part 2/3. If this were a movie, this is the part where I'd make some snarky comment to break the tension. But in real life, when a man worth several $billion looks you in the eye and says, "I think you should be part of this," you don't crack jokes. You just sit there and try not to visibly sweat. I glanced between him and the 3 suited men, wondering if part of this meant I was about to be initiated into a cult or quietly murdered. The bald man gestured toward a chair at the far end of the table. I sat down. "Your courier has a good presence," the bald man said to the billionaire. "Trustworthy face." "We'll see," the billionaire replied without looking at me. Mara, the flight attendant, had followed us into the room, but now stood silently near the door. It occurred to me she probably wasn't just a flight attendant. The way she scanned the room, controlled, precise, made me think of ex-military. The billionaire placed the sphere back into the case, locked it, and slid it toward the bald man. "Same location?" the billionaire asked. The bald man nodded. "It has to be done before sunrise." "Done? Done what?" My brain was cycling through possibilities. Science experiment, high-stakes sale, alien artifact smuggling, and all of them felt equally insane. Then the bald man turned to me. "You'll accompany us. Consider it training." Training for what exactly? No one explained. Before I could ask, we were already moving. The SUVs were waiting outside. This time I was in the same car as the billionaire. We drove for about 20 minutes before reaching the edge of the city, then wound up into the dark hills. Eventually we stopped at what looked like an abandoned observatory. The metal dome was rusted, the surrounding fence sagged in places, but there were faint lights glowing inside. The moment we stepped in, I knew this place was anything but abandoned. The interior had been stripped of any tourist-friendly equipment. Instead, there were computer racks lining the walls, humming softly. In the center of the room stood a platform surrounded by a ring of polished steel. Cables ran from the platform to a bank of machines, each one displaying data streams I couldn't begin to understand. The bald man set the case down on the platform. A woman in a white lab coat, mid-40s, hair in a tight braid, walked over. She greeted the billionaire with a quick handshake, then focused on the sphere like it was an old friend. "You brought it intact," she said, with relief in her voice. "Of course," the billionaire replied. "Let's proceed." They unlocked the case again. This time, the woman in the lab coat lifted the sphere with both hands and placed it in a cradle at the center of the platform. The silver liquid inside immediately began swirling again. The hum grew louder, resonating through my chest. "Stand back," the woman told me, not unkindly. I took a step back, standing next to Mara. The lab's overhead lights flickered. On one of the monitors, the data stream shifted, lines of strange symbols I didn't recognize, scrolling faster than my eyes could track. The woman glanced at the billionaire. "It's stronger this time." Then something happened that I know is going to sound fake, but I swear it's exactly how it happened. The silver liquid began to rise inside the sphere. Not just swirl, rise, like it was defying gravity. It formed into a perfect vertical column, then split into 2, then 4. Each section twisted into shapes. Some looked like letters, others like blueprints. The bald man spoke quickly in another language. The billionaire's eyes stayed locked on the sphere, unblinking. "What are we looking at?" I whispered to Mara. She didn't take her eyes off the display. "If you're smart, you'll stop asking that." After maybe 2 minutes, the liquid collapsed back into the sphere like nothing had happened. The lab coat woman rushed to the monitors, typing furiously. The bald man pulled the billionaire aside. I caught a fragment of their conversation. "Ready for transfer. Needs a carrier." Then, in unison, both men turned to look at me. It's worth noting here that I am not some ripped action hero. I'm 5 feet 9 inches, average build. My most dangerous possession is probably a coffee mug I once chipped on the counter. So when the bald man said, very matter-of-factly, "He'll do," I thought they were joking. They were not joking. The billionaire approached me. "You still have your return ticket to New York?" Yeah. "Good. You'll be taking something with you." I glanced at the sphere, then back at him. My voice cracked. "You want me to carry that?" He shook his head. "Not exactly, but you'll understand soon." The next thing I knew, the lab coat woman was asking me to sit in a chair beside the platform. Cables snaked out from a console and ended in small, flat discs. She began attaching them to my temples, my wrists, the base of my neck. "Don't move during the transfer," she said. "It can cause complications." Complications was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. The billionaire leaned over me. "You're about to be entrusted with something extremely valuable. It's not dangerous to you, unless you make it dangerous." Before I could ask what that meant, the woman activated the console. The hum returned, deeper this time, almost a vibration in the bones. The sphere on the platform flared with light, the silver liquid spinning faster and faster. I felt a warmth on my skin where the discs touched, then a strange sensation behind my eyes, like the moment before a sneeze, but stretched out. Images began flashing in my mind. Not my memories, at least, I don't think they were. Cities I didn't recognize. Faces of people I'd never met. Diagrams of machines that looked physically impossible. It was overwhelming, like someone was trying to pour an ocean into a teacup. I must have blacked out for a few seconds, because the next thing I remember is the hum dying down and the discs being removed. The billionaire was watching me closely. "You're carrying it now," he said simply. I blinked at him. "Carrying what?" "The data. Everything it showed us. It's in your memory now." I laughed nervously. "I can barely remember where I park most days. This is different. It's embedded. You won't be able to forget it, even if you try." The bald man handed me an envelope. Inside was a plane ticket, commercial, economy class. Destination, New York. Flight leaves in 12 hours. "You will go home," he said. "You will not speak of this to anyone. When we contact you, you will come." "And if I don't?" I asked, instantly regretting the question. He gave me a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "You will." They put me back in the SUV, this time alone. Mara wasn't with me. I was dropped at a hotel in the city center with instructions to rest. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those same images. The cities, the faces, the machines. Some of them began to make sense in ways I couldn't explain, like I'd known them my whole life. By the time I boarded my flight the next day, I was half convinced I'd dreamt the whole thing. But when I landed at JFK, there was a man waiting just past customs holding a sign with my name. He pressed a cheap prepaid flip phone into my hand and said only, "Keep it charged. They'll call when it's time." Then he vanished into the crowd. For the next 3 months, nothing happened. I went back to my crappy apartment, my delivery jobs, my normal life. The phone stayed in my desk drawer untouched. I started to think maybe it really was just a weird dream. Until, one night, the phone rang. That's where part 2 ends. In part 3, I'll tell you what they wanted, and why I almost didn't make it back. Part 3/3. The phone's ringtone was one of those tinny, generic beeps, but at 2:14 a.m., in my pitch-dark apartment, it might as well have been a fire alarm. I stared at the glowing, unknown number for a few seconds before answering. "Hello?" Silence. Then, the billionaire's voice, calm, clipped. "It's time. Meet the driver outside in 15 minutes. The line went dead. 15 minutes later, I was climbing into the back of a black sedan. Same driver from JFK. No greeting, no explanation. We pulled into traffic, heading toward the industrial outskirts of the city. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he handed me a small, hard-sided case. "Keep this closed until instructed," he said. The case was about the size of a lunchbox, secured with a biometric lock. The weight of it on my lap felt wrong, like it knew it didn't belong to me. We reached a private airstrip an hour later. A jet was waiting, engines already idling. When I stepped inside, the billionaire was there. Same navy suit, same unreadable expression. "You've been holding something for us," he said without preamble. "Tonight, we retrieve it." I'd assumed retrieve meant they'd just plug me back into their weird machine and pull the data out. I was wrong. Instead, we flew for 6 hours, landing in a small airport somewhere in South America. The air was thick and humid. Waiting on the tarmac were 3 off-road trucks, and about a dozen men carrying rifles. No one explained anything. We drove into the jungle, headlights cutting through walls of green. At some point, the road gave way to a muddy trail, and we continued until even the trucks couldn't go further. The billionaire finally spoke. "The place we're going is older than the language you speak," he said. "What you've been carrying is a key. Without it, the door stays closed." We hiked the rest of the way. After an hour, the trees opened into a clearing, and there it was. A massive stone structure, half swallowed by vines, rising from the earth like a buried cathedral. The front was a single wall of black stone, unbroken except for a circular indentation in the center. The billionaire gestured for me to approach. "Stand there," he instructed. The bald man, who had reappeared like he'd never left, placed the small case in my hands. The billionaire's voice was low but urgent. "The data in your head will guide the lock. Focus. You'll know what to do." I opened my mouth to say I definitely did not know what to do, but then, the moment I looked at that circular indentation, something shifted in my brain. Patterns from the visions I'd been seeing for months slid into place. It was like solving a puzzle I didn't realize I'd been working on. I stepped forward and pressed my palm against the indentation. The stone was warm. Symbols began to glow beneath my hand, matching the ones I'd seen inside the sphere. Somewhere deep inside, I felt a click, not in the stone, but in me. The wall shuddered, dust falling from the vines. Then, silently, it opened. Inside was darkness, so complete it felt solid. We stepped in, flashlights cutting narrow cones of visibility. The air smelled like wet earth and something older, like lightning after a storm. We descended a long ramp until the space opened into a vast chamber. In the center stood a second sphere, much larger than the one on the plane. This one wasn't filled with silver liquid. It was filled with light. The billionaire stepped past me, his voice almost reverent. "It's been waiting." The bald man handed me the small case again. "Place it at the base," he said. I did. The case's lock clicked open on its own. Inside was nothing, just a recess shaped exactly like my hand. I placed my palm inside. The sphere of light flared, blinding, searing. I heard a sound like 1,000 voices whispering in unison, speaking words I didn't understand but somehow felt. When the light faded, the billionaire was smiling for the first time since I'd met him. "You've done well," he said. "Now we can begin." Begin what? He didn't answer. The next hours are a blur. I remember being led back to the trucks, the jungle seeming quieter than before. I remember the billionaire making a call in that same clipped tone, saying only, "It's active." We were halfway back to the airstrip when one of the trucks behind us swerved, slammed into a tree, and exploded. Gunfire erupted from the tree line. The driver shouted something I didn't catch. We accelerated, bouncing over the muddy trail. I ducked as bullets tore through the foliage. One of the armed men in the back of our truck returned fire, yelling for me to stay low. Somewhere behind us, I heard another explosion. Then nothing but the roar of the engine until we reached the airstrip. We took off within minutes. No one spoke during the flight. When we landed, back in the U.S., though I couldn't tell where, the billionaire turned to me. "You've carried two things for us now, the key and the proof you can be trusted. You'll be called again." He handed me a new phone, sleeker than the last. "When it rings, you answer, no matter where you are." And then, just like that, I was put in a taxi and sent home. It's been 6 weeks since. I still don't know what exactly I unlocked, or what "begin" means in their world. I still see flashes of those visions sometimes, only now, there's a new image. A city I've never been to. A building I've never seen. And a clock counting down. Last night, the phone on my desk lit up. It didn't ring. It just showed a single message. 4 days. And that's where I'm at now. If you've read this far, I'm either about to disappear or about to find out what all of this has been leading to. Maybe both. If I don't post again, well, I guess you'll know why.